now we're in the first question. So I'm not
Okay,
sure. What can you say about the beams? All right, your first reaction when you heard about the beam.
sure. So the first reaction was that it's very exciting technology, being able to do that, and it was quite a departure from just 2D CAD drafting or and the information, the idea that you can incorporate the information and physically build the building inside of the computer space was pretty amazing, but it was also very overwhelming at the same time in terms of uh, being able to do that and what all that entailed. It was just kind of an unknown, um, uh, um,
Okay,
basically.
okay, thank you for that. All right. So
Uh,
my second question is that being an experienced architect in the United States of America, how does the beam technology affect the AEC industry or the architecture, engineering, and construction industry?
yeah. So so the way it affects um, uh, the way it affects, there's a few things it does. It's kind of created its own little cottage industry, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
It's different than designing buildings and putting together buildings altogether. But the getting into the everything that a BIM model can incorporate is something that's very advantageous to owners, contractors, things like that. From an architectural perspective, it requires an immense amount more time to kind of get to that level of detail, and very rarely do we get all the way to that level of detail.
Mm-hmm.
But it does increase the capabilities, especially on larger projects, to be able to
Yeah.
coordinate with different teams, mechanical
Yeah.
uh,
The planes.
engineers,
Yeah.
electrical engineers, plumbing engineers, structural engineers, and understanding some of the costly mistakes that you just can't understand in a 2D world. Um, uh, and from the collisions and different
Yeah.
things
Yeah.
like
The
that,
passing, the
it's
interference.
very helpful to work out problems prior to them being built. So in some ways that's really good. From an architectural perspective, it's just it's an enormous amount of more time that you have to spend on the front end before
Yeah.
buildings start getting built too, though.
Mm-hmm.
So it's which it's good and bad.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
bad from a time frame perspective because developers are always wanting to do things more quickly. Um, and so you
okay.
just got to kind of figure out what the is it better to spend more time up front planning, or is it better to spend more time getting stuff out of the ground?
Uh
That's
huh.
the question.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that. All right. So um, I know that you're also using CAD, but my third question is about as a designer and an owner of an architectural firm, do you prefer working in a simple CAD technology or now it's in a BIM technology?
Well, personally, I prefer working in CAD because it's simpler and it's a little bit more
Mm-hmm.
facile, I guess, or it's a little bit easier to work with in terms of um, uh, figuring out designs quickly. Um, uh, BIM is good from uh, I mean, there's advantages to both from an architectural perspective, but BIM is much better in terms of communicating with clients.
Mm-hmm.
Primarily because you can look at things from a three-dimensional perspective.
Yeah, I agree.
Um, because the problem with 2D is that unless you just have not everybody has good spatial kind of understanding of how things look in reality. So it's very helpful to have that from a communication standpoint and a presentation standpoint. So I love
Mhm.
it for that reason. It's just
Yeah,
really kind of transformed what we can do in a short amount of time.
yeah, perfect. So I think question number four relates to your some of your answer from two and three, but I wanted to focus on question number five because it's like the opposite on most of your answer, like the disadvantage or what is your dislike on um, on the BIM technology as an architectural firm, as a licensed architect in the US.
Mhm. Um, uh, so the things that I like the most about BIM technology are things like the 3D capabilities that we just talked about, the ability to understand the buildings prior to them being built, so you eliminate a lot of costly mistakes in the field. Um, uh, and even more exciting, I think, in the future, as different vendors and different architects and different things become available from a modeling perspective, being able to like really truly build the building in
Uh-huh.
in uh, in the computer space to where it's like everything is completely figured out. You know, everything down to you know lighting, wiring. I
Yeah.
mean, you can and being able to do like takeoffs. I mean, helping the contractor. You know, I think
Yeah.
it's just going to be more and more critical as I mean, the advantages are that as we move forward in time, and the more things that we can incorporate, the there's enormous pressure to drive costs down on things, and so anything that we can do to kind of understand that and do that as we design, I think that BIM will eventually allow us to do that, whether it does now or not. I mean, it's just going to take time to kind of understand
Mm-hmm.
and figure out how to get it all done. Um,
Yeah.
uh, from number five, the disadvantages are one. It's difficult. Um, uh, it's difficult from a construction drawing perspective.
Uh-huh.
There's some things that that are we used to be able to do that are a little bit more precisely, I think, in 2D,
Yeah, I agree on that.
which is which is kind of counterintuitive if you're thinking that you're building everything in computer space, but when you're trying to do it quickly, I mean, I guess 2D is a little bit faster.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
because you don't have to figure out so much of every little piece,
You
whereas
just
in
think
BIM, if
you just think 2D plane, flat
yeah,
surface.
and
Mm-hmm.
so it's easier to I mean, it's easier to kind of put the puzzle together in two dimensions.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it's one of those things where if you're doing a renovation, for instance, if you're walking through a space, it's much easier to, you would think you could like visualize it while you're walking through the space, but it's much easier to get it down in a 2D plan format and then
Yeah.
start seeing how spaces work together,
Mm-hmm.
um, uh, how everything relates to each other dimensionally and all that kind of stuff before you take it to a 3D um,
Yeah.
uh, kind of perspective. And it's also very difficult for young um, designers and architects to learn in the
Yeah, I
3D
agree on
format
that.
as well. I think because you have to know so much
Yeah, the
in order
training.
to yeah. So it's going to require it requires so much more understanding of how buildings go together
Mm-hmm.
to physically work in a 3D format because I mean it creates a difficult. I mean, until you understand. I mean, it's almost like you shouldn't be working in BIM until you have like a few years of
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah.
You should have to work, for a while just understanding how things go together versus like jumping straight into BIM. But
Mm. So
um,
you're more
and the
worries on detailing, construction detailing, and the training for the staff or draftsman, something like that. On can I mean migrating from CAD to the BIM. So right.
yeah,
Okay.
and then the other piece is that it requires a lot of computer power. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
the models can get really slow
Yeah.
even on the fastest computers. I mean, the
Yeah.
models can get bogged down really quickly
So
unless you have a lot of power.
so
I
so
mean, even
that
on the gaming computers, I mean,
yeah.
have trouble handling models. So because there's so much information. I mean, especially when you start putting in like different kind of site features like trees and anything that has so much detail.
Mm-hmm.
It really starts to bog down your model and causes the program to freeze up and crash and all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
it's slow.
I always
It can be
experience that.
it can be slower to work with from that perspective. I guess is
Mm-hmm.
another disadvantage. Um,
Yeah.
uh,
So construction drawing. Yeah, construction drawing, detailing, and the second one is the training for the staff, and then the third one is the um, technology or the hardware software kind of upgrade.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I agree on those things. Yeah, because I feel those um, hardware thing that sometimes most of the time I experience lagging on the laptops, computers.
Yeah, I mean, it takes a once the models get too big. It's just it's important to kind of keep it into small pieces, I guess, that feed into one big model.
Hmm.
But it can be really slow.
Yeah,
Um,
I think that's all for my side, sir. That's all according to my questions. Just five questions, is that right?
well, thank you, Jag. I was glad you thought of me to ask to answer some of your questions, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm very happy, so right, to have you. It's one of my part of the survey for my dissertation. I'm going to put your name to ask you a permission, so right? Maybe on my acknowledgement.
Absolutely.
On my
Sure.
acknowledgement, I have here two of my friends and then another instructor, and then I'm going to add this one, your name, to add.
That's totally fine. That's
Yeah.
totally fine.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Right. I really
Hmm.
appreciate your time.
Yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure, Jag.
Okay.
Have a good weekend.
Thank you so much. Have a nice day and weekend to you, sir. Right.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Okay. Bye bye.